Welcome to the Ferment Podcast, conversations about worship and transformation. Today's guests are Daniel and Nicole Hernández. Daniel and Nicole are worship leaders and songwriters from the Vineyard Church in Columbus, Ohio.
All right, what up, everybody? My name is Adam. You're listening to the podcast here, and I have my new very best friends in the world, Daniel and Nicole. Daniel and Nicole, why don't you say what up?
Hey.
What up?
That is right. Hey, I'm glad you guys are here. Hey, here's what I was hoping we would do this afternoon. I was hoping we would talk a little bit about, your story, the things we always do on the Ferment. But I also want to talk about what it means to be a Hispanic person in the Vineyard. So we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. But before we do that, I was thinking maybe Daniel, maybe you could give everybody a shout out in Spanish, because I don't think we've ever started the podcast in Spanish. So
I was just going to ask that.
Yeah, why don't you give everybody a shout out? Would that be cool? I don't know. Some kind of a welcome.
Hola. ¿Qué tal? Aquí estamos.
Bueno, bienvenidos todos los que escuchan a este podcast. Qué gusto estar aquí con ustedes compartiendo. Y bueno, esperemos que esto sea de su agrado.
That sounds amazing. I have no idea what's going on right now, but it's so good. Great. Well, hey, why don't we do this? Because we've spent the morning together and just had really delightful conversation that was really helpful, and put all kinds of ideas in my head for Vineyard worship in the future. But I think we should just start with your story. So, Daniel, Nicole, why don't you guys let everybody know who you are, where you're from, how you grew up? You know, hit me with any of that.
All right. You want to start? I can start. Okay. So my name is Daniel Hernández. I'm from Venezuela, born and raised there. Yeah, I met the Lord when I was 13, and it was a very fun story because where I grew up, it was kind of like a little dangerous place in Venezuela. And
That does sound fun.
yeah, that sounds fun.
That sounds great already.
And I remember, like, every time that I go down of the bus station and I have to go to my house, I run, and because, you know, like, you don't want to get into trouble in the way. And I noticed that one of my neighbors studying the same school that I study, he walked with me. So we kind of protect each other in the way. So we became really good friends. We started spending time together. And it turns out his dad was a pastor in a church in Venezuela. And that church became actually the first Vineyard church in Venezuela. So the fun thing is that they invite me to church on a Sunday, and that was the first time ever that I heard live music. I never hear an instrument play live before
Really?
I went to yes.
Okay, so I have to stop you right there, because my perception of Latin America would be there's just live music on every corner.
Well, like, not really. I mean, not like that. Not like a band, like drums, and like, not everybody has a drum. You can hear people playing some folkloric instruments or some stuff, but not like a band, like a live band, bass, guitar, drums. Never hear that play together.
Okay, so when you heard the live band, what did you think?
I thought that this is great. This sounds amazing. I want to learn.
Oh, nice.
So that Sunday, they say, hey, there's going to be music classes for the youth. If you are part of the youth group, you can come to these classes for free. So I'm like, I'm in. So I started going to the youth group, and that was a lot of fun. But then I started learning percussion. That was actually the first instrument that I was.
And when you say percussion, do you mean like congas or shakers? What were you learning?
Well, actually, the first one was something called kitiplas, which is like a bamboo type of drums.
And do you play with like little mallets?
You play against the floor. So it's a quartet that plays the bamboo against the floor, and it sounds
Very
really
traditional.
cool.
You mean you hit it on the floor?
You hit on the floor, so there's different sounds and like different styles, different size of bamboo.
Yeah.
So, but it was fun because every time that we got the ride back home, me and my neighbors, we were making the sound with the mouth all the way to the house. And I don't know how the dad was, but he's like, can you stop, please, doing those? Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, so your way into the church was you had a friend, you're walking together, you're kind of like protecting each other. It's just a little safer. His dad's a pastor, but it was the music that really
it was
drew
the
you
music.
in.
It was the music. At the beginning, that was the way in.
Yeah.
Later on, like, I loved the group. I loved those guys became my friends, my brothers, and then their moms became my moms, and their dads became my dads, and so it became a family.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was little Daniel. But now you're like all grown up, and I know earlier you mentioned to me that you spent some time as an engineer, but now I know you're a pastor. You're going to be a pastor.
Right.
So what happened to take you from engineer to pastor?
That's a good question. I think like since I was serving in the church, there was always something there. I love serving people. I love being there to serve people, and that was something that I couldn't fulfill as an engineer.
Yeah.
There was something in the engineering that I love problem solving, but there was something missing. It's like I'm not. It feels like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that it was hard for me is that there's no people involved that much. I mean, it's very abstract. There's a lot of machines, a lot of stuff, a lot of things that you have to sit in a desk and design. But there was something beautiful about walking with someone through their problems or just through life and then seeing them getting better. So I was like, I'd rather do this type of engineering with people, if that makes sense. So
yeah, that's right. That's a new definition of pastoring, isn't it?
Well,
people engineering.
Nicer than that.
I like it.
But
I think it's great.
But I think like there's a lot of stuff that I learned from engineering that I apply today. Like I work with someone, get all the information I can, and then I try to find practical ways for them to go to the place that God wants for them. So
amazing. Okay, so let's go to you for a moment, Nicole. Like what's your story a little bit? Like where did you grow up? What was your family like? When did you come to faith?
So it was my great-grandparents that migrated from Mexico. I'm fourth generation Mexican-American. Mm-hmm. And my grandparents decided not to teach their kids to speak Spanish to save them from the discrimination that they faced. And
that's an interesting choice, isn't it?
Yeah. And what is the most interesting about that is it kind of had an opposite effect when I was growing up, because I faced discrimination because I looked Mexican or Hispanic and did not speak Spanish.
Yeah. So in some ways, too English and caught between two worlds.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
I would look at other kids who were going to school with me, and there were a lot of, kids who were my age. They started immersion programs and, how to start learning English in schools. And I would run into kids on the playground and they'd look at me and start speaking to me. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying. And they just thought I was pretending or, joking with them. And I'm like, I really don't know what you're saying.
All right. So tell me what area of the country you grew up in.
Yeah. So I grew up in California. Yeah. In Pomona. So just outside of LA.
Shout out to Pomona.
Ooh.
There you go.
Pretty much born and raised there. And so I remember growing up in church.
Yeah.
We went to service. I don't remember not going to service. And I know that we started attending a vineyard in Pomona. And that was when I was 6. And I also remember very vividly sitting in my room when I was 7, all by myself, just thinking I really would like Jesus to live in my heart. And that's the first moment I remember saying, I want to know who Jesus is.
Yeah, so it's like some of your earliest childhood memories.
Yes, very much so.
All right, so how did you two meet? Because we're talking Venezuela, California.
I can share a little bit more of
that'd be
where
great.
I went from there. So, I mean, and my family had some different struggles. I would say there's a bit of disconnect that happened because of that kind of migration, because of those language barriers. I remember actually meeting my great-grandmother and her not understanding what we were saying, or I'm not understanding what she's saying. So there is that component in my family, and just like financial struggles and those things. But I know that it was in the church that, again, like what Daniel was saying, there's this sense of family that I was able to experience that I think I was just searching for at that time. And it was really amazing to see people just come around, me as I'm growing up. So part of that, growing up in church, part of just really being intrigued with music, coming from a musical family, and, singing in choirs and wanting to learn instruments. And it was when I was in middle school that I really wanted to know, okay, what else is there? What's going on? What do I know Jesus is in my heart. Went to youth camp, and had that moment where it was I remember the theme of that camp where you make words, right? It's go mad, go make a difference. And I wanted to know how I could do that at my age. Went on a missions trip to Mexico. And since then, I mean, at that point on, through my high school years, growing in music, being invited to join the worship team, learn how to lead worship and being mentored in that, and then it was in that time that another worship leader who was at Pomona Vineyard said, hey, why don't you come along? I'm going to go lead at a viña, a Spanish-speaking vineyard in California. And I didn't know that those existed. And I don't speak Spanish. I still didn't speak Spanish then. And he said, it's okay. You can come and learn how to sing in Spanish and you can bless people in this way. And, it's okay. You can go in. And I loved it. I loved it. I felt like there was another part of me that was discovered in that place that I didn't know was there. And maybe I could learn how to speak Spanish.
So when this was going on, were you a teenager?
I was, yeah. I'd say 14, 15.
Nice.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say that when you went to the camp and says, go mad, that's when we met. Like, because you went mad. No, I'm just kidding.
So after those, continuing on in this way, just loving leading in Spanish, to be honest, it was, I don't know, it was different. There was something different about it that
So you were singing in Spanish, but you still weren't a fluent speaker.
No, I was even I went to Mexico and I remember leading in Spanish and I led all the songs that I knew and they said, sing another one, like lead another song. And I didn't have any more. I didn't know anymore. And, it was just things like that intrigued me to want to, move toward learning Spanish at some point. So all these things just kept sparking those interests, ideas about, hey, maybe this is still possible. I thought I'd missed the mark. I thought I'd lost the chance to do that.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes we have that idea that if you don't catch the language thing when you're a kid, it's just over.
Yeah.
But it's not true.
It's not true.
You can learn it as an adult.
It's very, yeah. And so I was invited to join my first trip to Venezuela with a team that was a partnership that was happening from that region. And I said, yes, that was the year I graduated from high school. And that's where we met on that first trip after a crazy
Was it
flight.
love at first sight?
Was it?
I don't know.
I like that question. I like the way you said that, Daniel. Was it? I don't know.
Like
I can tell you.
Do you remember meeting her?
Yes,
do because
we will not forget that
actually,
moment.
Like I went to my friend's house in Valencia, and like a city like an hour and a half from the capital.
Yeah.
And I was taking a nap. Like that, I was enjoying my nap, and then in the middle of the nap, group.
I need to tell my part before you say that. But we'd flown in, of course, like midnight, drove for hours, and finally made it to the hotel. And it was our mutual friend, who said, "Oh, cool! Like we've gotten here. They're gonna make lunch. Why don't we? I think Daniel's asleep in the back. Let's go say hi." And I'm like, this is very odd. Why would we do that?
Yeah.
But we have a common friend, and she's the one that introduced both of us in an interesting way. Like she told me, hey, I'm going with a team. There's someone that you might like. That's what she said.
Okay, so that idea had been seeded.
Yeah. And she sent
one-sided. I didn't.
Yeah. Nicole had no idea. She sent me the flyer with the team. And she actually put one of your...
It's probably my worst picture. I think it was to see if it was really love,
And you don't know me, but when I'm asleep and somebody wake me up, I get so cranky.
Yeah.
And that was like, oh, let's yell. Like when we go to the room, let's just scare Daniel.
She has this song that she'll sing every single time, and I think that she thought it was really funny.
And then they start singing loud, and I'm about to come out of my
you're not happy.
Sleep, and I'm not happy at all. And then I see all these faces that I don't know. I'm like, that's how I met Nicole.
I was not singing. I was not doing that.
So because you made it clear this is weird.
This is weird. I stood way in the back.
Why are we doing this? Who's this poor man we're waking up right now?
Well, and we had talked. We did the phone dial. You call cards. There was no just quick internet. You can't just call somebody from wherever you want at any time. We had to make it intentional and call to the house and plan out some things for worship. So we had talked before, but we had not met.
Right.
So.
Okay. So you're like 17?
I was 18.
You were 18.
Yeah.
Daniel, how old were
Oh,
you?
he's getting specific.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're 6.5 years apart. So
Gotcha.
I was, 24?
24.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds horrible. No.
I don't think so. I think that's acceptable.
18, 24?
Yeah.
It's acceptable.
It's on the line.
It's on the line. Yeah. She was out of high school. I was getting out of college.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then did you guys stay connected afterwards, or was there like you go home and you know?
We did. We stayed connected. It was like
Actually-
a week or more,
sorry.
about 2 weeks that I was there.
But the weird thing was that we started just talking random things. Like, what's your favorite movie? And then, oh, this movie. And I was like, that's my favorite movie too. That's weird. Like, and we started like,
Yeah.
I love Brazilian music. That's what Nicole
Yeah.
said.
I
I love Brazilian music. So we were like listening the same head Walkman
Walkman.
for a while. and
CD
we were like,
Walkman.
whoa, like, so since then we have so much in common to talk about.
I just happened to, that was one of the things that I brought with me was
Yeah.
some of my music, and I,
like Brazilian
music.
bossa nova.
Oh, yeah.
just
All
just
that.
like
Or
some
any-
fusion stuff, and
Okay.
yeah.
And you guys,
pronunciation, the chords, everything. We love Brazilian music.
so that was your first connection point.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so were you both doing worship together right away, or was it just friendship?
No, the first connection was because we have to let worship during that mission trip.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we started I sent Nicole some songs in Spanish for her to listen and practice, and then we gather. We played 2 hours after we met.
We met.
We met.
Yeah. So good. Oh, okay, so then how much longer after that before you guys got married, and how did you do the long
It was the
distance
next day.
thing?
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, and how did you do
We
the
just
long
knew.
distance thing?
Yeah. Well, so we're still friends. We talked
Yeah.
all the time.
After that trip, I went back.
Yeah.
Right, I was
went-
starting college. I
You
was
went
in
back
school.
twice after that.
Then I went again. We went for Holy Week, which is during Easter, and you do another thing toward the ocean. It's really hot, and even though being at the beach sounds great, we're trying to do things to serve people. So it was pretty hot, and that
place
was.
to do mission trip, like in the beach of Venezuela.
I don't think I swam. I swam maybe once on that whole trip. It was yeah. So, but the point is, like, we wanted to.
But I didn't want any
people
long
in that
distance
place.
relationship.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want a long distance relationship. This is like, she's in the United States, I'm here. Let's be friends. But we talk every night. We chat every day. We send emails all the time.
In between trips, yeah.
Yeah.
So
it was like between that moment and the day that we got married was like 2 years, I think. Yeah.
So did either of you move to the other place?
So he actually did an internship after my third trip in the U.S.
Yeah.
So he came and partnered with another church that was nearby, and for that same region was just there to learn. And
Yeah. Our wedding was really funny because it looks more like an area meeting, like a regional.
That's
like
right.
there were lots of pastors there. Like our wedding party was like, oh, this is from the church of this church and that church, and all the churches that were partnering with Venezuela. It was pretty funny.
well, and because there was that partnership that existed so long, like even like some friends that we had in common between those different churches, Melissa, Bill Jagu, Terry, like there were just certain people, Terry Butler, who knew both of us growing up in some ways.
In different contexts.
And then we found out, oh, we all know each other
Yeah.
later on. So
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I see in your story is, and I think this is pretty common sometimes, that there's something about our vineyard connection that oftentimes brings us the best things in our life, you know? You know, even like our spouses or our mates or our, not just our callings, but our friends,
Yeah.
the people we build lives with. It's a pretty common story. I love it. And now you have 2 kids and they're in the other room over here.
We do, yeah.
Are they still
Yeah.
okay?
I think they look like they're doing great.
Okay,
so.
they're doing great. By the way, for those of you who are listening, we're at some kind of like shared office space thing. We have like a room and there's some it's very strange. It's an odd place to do a podcast. Okay, so let's take a right turn here. I would love if you all would talk to me, especially Daniel, if you would talk to me about, because you were sharing earlier this morning in a conversation just about what the vineyard means to you, like as a Latin person, as someone who grew up in Venezuela, and the church was, it was Venezuelan, and worship was maybe very specific to the context in which you grew up in, and then you met the vineyard. I would love for you to just talk to us a little bit about what the vineyard means to you as a Latin person, and are there vineyard values that were like refreshing to you?
Yeah, well, I was raised Catholic, like almost everyone in Latin America. My dad, on the other side, he was raised in one very legalistic church, and he actually didn't want anything to do with Christian churches.
Right.
So, like for me, like there were only two options. Like you either become a legalistic Christian or a Catholic, and I didn't feel comfortable with any of those options. Like none of them represent what I feel I am, or better say, I don't feel I can express myself
right.
in any of those two. So when I was invited to the vineyard, especially with the friends that I have, and the way that they were able to be themselves, but also have a genuine pursuit of God, like that was like for me, it represent freedom. I would say like that was a lot of, if I can put words to it, I think freedom is one.
Yeah.
Like grace is a huge one for me. Like that was the first time that I saw people ministry time. I was like, what is this? Like, how is that people is standing up to talk about or like deep scenes sometimes, or deep stuff and deep struggles, and they just come and receive prayer, and the person is praying for them is not judging them or just like, and I see people crying and feeling like, I was like, this is beautiful. And coming from a rough childhood, I was like, wow, this is how a second chance looks like. So the vineyard became this safe place, this place of grace, but also a big family.
Yeah.
Like, because we all kind of share this, like we understood each other without speaking words. And I'm not saying that it was like I'm not saying that vineyard was like a club, not at all. What I'm saying is that there is something about the values and the way that we express the values that is so unique that you know what's happening without saying words.
That's right.
It makes sense.
Well, and I love the way you're framing that there. And I would just say, even though you and I grew up very different, right, and thousands of miles apart, that note you were pulling out there about grace and about the vineyard ministry time where people could say maybe some things about themselves, being self-disclosing, or to say, I'm a really broken person. I'm standing up right now, you know, and have someone else come and pray for them and it be not a big deal. Man, I think that's not just something that hits you. I think that's something that's in our vineyard story for a lot of us. I think it's our magic bullet, you know. If there is one, it's whatever that is, and I can't even put my finger on it. Man, I resonate with that deeply.
And that was like, that was for me. I wanted to invite everyone. I want everyone to know, like, hey, there's a space of grace in the middle of this dichotomy. So that was that's what grabbed me in the vineyard movement.
Okay, so let's go the different direction here. So I'm asking you, like, what's refreshing, and I think that was a beautiful answer. But you've been in the vineyard for more than a moment, and Nicole, you can jump in here too. Like, what are maybe some challenges for you as a Hispanic person living in our vineyard world? You know, in the ways that our vineyard values, or maybe just the way that we relate. I'm sure there's probably challenges as well.
Well, yeah, they are for sure. There are some challenges that I experienced in Venezuela. Yeah. Like sometimes people don't think about the Vineyard Church as a serious church. They're used to, hey, it has to be structured, organized. How is that the pastor is not wearing something more formal, like for example? So, or how is that the worship is? I mean, for some churches it's mellow, for others too alive. So it was hard for people to understand. Is this a church? Why are you meeting in a mall? Why are you not meeting in a building with the cross and all that? So that was one challenge. Like, I think now in the United States, one challenge that I found is that I feel that the culture speed is different between the English culture and at least that's my experience, in the Hispanic culture.
Talk to me about that.
I feel that we're living in how is that called? Post-Christian culture?
Definitely.
Yeah, so
we are headlong into a post-Christian culture.
So everything is a little different. And then when you want to translate some of that to a pre-Christian culture like the Hispanic, so there's a lot of challenges there.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to say about that? Because that's very interesting.
Well,
because it is true. There's a sense in which things like postmodernism or just the pluralistic society that we live in the United States, which is, very Western, I can see that. Like maybe white culture has become or is becoming quickly post-Christian, and we're kind of like, we're over that or whatever. So what else would you like to say about that?
Well, the way that I see post-Christian culture is like, well, I want to know if I can belong here so I can start behaving like everyone, so I believe.
Yeah.
So in the Hispanic, I feel that it's more like I belong already for being Hispanic.
Yeah.
So, and I already have knowledge of God somehow, either from the Catholic background or for just the Christian background, the country that I come from. Why do I have to go all that around just for you to tell me what to believe? So I feel like it's a little, like, for example, let me give you an example. Names. When you plan an activity, you want to create a name in English that is appealing for everyone. But when you translate that name, it's like this doesn't make any sense for the Spanish congregations. Or for the Hispanic
talk to me about that some more, because that's really interesting. Because that wouldn't be the first thing I think of, right? Yeah. If you want to create a class, a music class, then you call it, I don't know, how would you call a music class? Like are we going to
Sound Lab?
Yeah, Sound Lab.
Sound Lab.
Of course, we're gonna teach you how to run sound and make your service sound better.
But let's say that you want to involve Sound Lab for churches, but you don't say for churches because then it might create a little barrier for people. It's like, this is just for Christians, maybe. So you try to make it very open for everyone.
Right.
So, but then you come to if you call it, hey, we're gonna have
Sonido or
Laboratorio de Sonidos. People's like,
what?
What in the world is that? What is Sound Lab? What does that mean? Is this for churches? Is it for everyone? Why are we making this for everyone? I thought this was for a church. So it's a little clash there. But that's just a on the fly example. But I found little things translatable like that. That is like, this is challenging.
Yeah, and these little things are indicative of the ways in which our cultures sometimes talk past one another. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah. Sometimes, and sometimes we feel like, the sense that I get is like, maybe we can do this with Lavinia. Maybe we can try to do more. I don't know, X, Y, but it's not translatable. It's not contextualized. So, and that's something common when you do cross-cultural work.
That's right. That's right. Nicole, is there anything you want to add to this little moment that we're having right here?
Talking about challenges that the
exactly.
Hispanics are facing in the U.S. I would say one of the big ones that we've seen now living in Ohio and, living in California before, I still see, whether it's first or second generation, because you're moving in and you're having to start over, having consistency is a difficulty. And, people trying to find out, where is it that I'm going to call home now? We hear this story a lot, and just trying to find ways to support people in this for them to start over it's a process, and there's challenges there. You want to see people become leaders or really plug in, and their whole family maybe is moving to another state, and guess what? Like, they're going to go with them because that's what they know. That's the way that they can support each other. So that I would say that's a challenge.
Okay, so let's go into maybe a slightly different direction here. I know that you guys are in the process right now of starting your own Lavinia like campus kind of a situation in Columbus. It's very exciting. So high fives to you guys.
Thanks.
Can you just talk to us about what your vision for worship would be at your church?
Yeah.
You know, Columbus it's a big city.
It is a big city.
You know, it's not New York, it's not LA, but it's still a big city. And you're going to be reaching out to Latin people as a Lavinia. So what are you hoping that worship, or maybe even just your church, what's the feel? What's in your mind?
Well, let me just start saying that we are, like, the track that we're running right now is very surreal for a Latino pastor. I would say that I mean, being able to do a residency where I was invested by incredible leadership, but not just that, now being supported by a church like Vineyard Columbus to go and plan a campus, a Spanish campus. And when I say supported, it's not like, okay, we can make accommodations for that. It's like wow, no, we want to work, and this launch, this campus is going to be an effort of everyone. So like, it's very surreal. I'm like, sometimes I'm like, God, this is just your grace and your favor, because this is incredible.
Amazing.
So in that way, we want to stay connected to the vision of the church, because but of course, there's every campus will have the feeling a little bit related to who is leading it. With worship, we just feel like we just want people to experience what we experienced growing up and what we're experiencing even today. Like, people just encountering God in this incredible place of grace, where you surrender and offer who you are. Like if you can get to that place of surrendering and offering, I think that's the beginning of everything. At least in my life has been like that. Every time that I say, Lord, I surrender all, or Lord, I offer you this, that's when I've seen the most changes in my life, or meaningful transformation. So
yeah. Well, let me ask another question about that, because you're going to have this Lavinia campus. I could imagine that you're going to attract some people who are maybe newly immigrated to the U.S. Maybe they barely know English. You know, they know enough to get through the airport, and they're here and they're working. You know, and then I can also imagine that your church is going to have maybe some kids, or even some second generation folks who are native English speakers, but they also speak some Spanish, and maybe Spanish is secondary to them, right? Talk to me about how you do church when maybe a lot of people look the same. You know, even like your marriage is even kind of an example of this, right?
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, right.
She's pretty. Like, we don't look the same. She's like,
but talk to me about that dichotomy, because I literally never thought about this until I began to talk to Vineyard pastors who were leading Spanish congregations, and about, wow, you're not just getting Latin people,
right?
You're getting Latin. Well, they could be from Central America, they could be from South America, or maybe they're from the United States, but they have family, and so their stories can be very different, and it's not monolithic. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, it's very complex. As you mentioned, it's very complex. There's lots of components. There's lots of idiosyncrasies when you go to the different places and different people. But I think there's a lot of commonalities too. And if we can work out those commonalities, that work.
Yeah.
I think like solidarity is one. For example, like, it doesn't matter where you come in Latin America, if there is a need and there's a way to help each other, doesn't matter if you're first or second generation, you want to do something about it. Yeah. So that's some of the stuff that can happen. The first generation, like, one of the things is like, they just want to be seen. Like, a lot of people come as first generation, and they are doctors, engineers, professionals in their country, and they come looking for a new narrative, but they are willing to start very waiters or just working in roof. And if it's hard to imagine unless you went through that route. It's hard to imagine the feeling. I remember me coming as an engineer, and the first type of work that somebody paid me for was to dig a hole in a backyard to make a walkway. And I remember sitting, I was so depressed. I was like, man, I left all that to become this here.
Yeah.
So it's exhausting. So if the church can become that place where people can rest from life,
Right.
And not just rest, but hey, this is the family, and this is where people see who I am.
Right.
So the first generation feels honor every time that we see them. Now,
And how do we see them?
how do we say? Well, like one is first, like I would say, honoring like who they are. Like you are, the first, like I acknowledge you. You are an older person. I hear what you say. Giving a space for the person to share the experience. That has been one of the most beautiful things we have seen. Is when we create these spaces to share experiences. Like
Share your story.
Share story. We did a little activity
Just
the
this
other
week,
day in a small group, and I was saying just share a little bit of something that you lament or like that it was hard for you. And you see, like we
Actually, the question was, what was a sweet moment for you in life? And what was interesting is all those sweet moments that they were sharing came from a place of lament, came from a place of pain, that afterwards they were able to see what God was doing. And that's what made the moment sweet.
And were these like Hispanic people
yeah.
in your home group?
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And was this a mix of first and second generation people, or?
This is most first generation.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're asking, hey, just tell me something sweet.
Yeah.
And these stories that came through had some weight to them.
Yeah.
So when you do add a little elements that honor the first generation, like maybe a little more liturgy, because that's mostly Catholics are used to liturgy. But when hey, let's stand up to read the Bible, for example, that's something that we don't do that much, or the communion every Sunday, or like little things like that. And this is like
that's actually really smart. It's so simple, isn't it?
It is very simple. Like little elements like that, like it helps a lot. And then you have the second generation that they are looking more for, where is my place? They are not that much looking to be seen, but they're looking for a place to belong, because they don't feel like, I can be part. I understand the English congregations, but there's something in the way that I was raised that it feels different.
And then I will say, there is 1.5, generation 1.5, which I think we're finding a lot right now. Our kids are 1.5.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because they feel Venezuelan and they feel Latino, but they don't necessarily feel like they have to belong to either or. They don't really have to pick. I mean, it's kind of the best of both worlds, but, they don't have an accent in English. And so I would wonder, like, what I'm seeing is they do want to be present in Spanish-speaking environments, but still learning how to navigate, does this mean that I have to give this up? Or how can I be here? And, our kids, for example, will serve with VC Kids, and it's in English, but the 11 o'clock service for Spanish has a lot of children coming in who their families just got here, like the week before. And so there's a huge need for translation. And that's how our kids serve. They translate for the children's ministry right now.
Amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, and that's stuff that we're working out in real time right now. It's like a very unique American cultural story in the church right now. Amazing. That's really beautiful. Okay, let's switch gears again. I want to talk to you about associations, because it's like a new thing in the Vineyard.
Yeah.
And we have these new associations that have started up. So we've got an association for Hispanic pastors and leaders, Black pastors and leaders, women pastors and leaders, and Asian pastors and leaders. I'd love to just hear what you all think about the associations and maybe what that might mean for the Vineyard going forward, because you're clearly right in the middle of one of those associations.
Yeah, what would that mean in the future? I'm not sure, but I have a lot of hope.
Yeah.
What
are you hoping for? That's a great way to frame it.
I've seen, like, I don't know. I have the privilege to see a lot of things from the beginning, like the beginning of the Viña in Venezuela, and then some conversations at the beginning of the Viñas in Ecuador, but also coming here and hearing the story, like coming to California and hearing the story of how the Vineyard movement and all that. And I mean, I've seen like how the Latinos has been little by little invited to the table. But what I see today is that there's no like invited to the table only, but it feels like, hey, no, you're not invited. You're part of the table. This is us. So there's this type of openness. I think there's a lot of things that happen when you're invited, when you are in the table. So a lot of conversations. And I mean, I remember one pastor called me one day just asking for a question. Hey, there's a guy that wants to do a church, a Hispanic guy that wants to start a church in my church. He wasn't a vineyard guy. What do you recommend? And I answered, how do you know this guy? Like, do you know, are you friend with him? Do you know how he struggled, or you know his family? No, I don't know any. Like, that's how you start. You start becoming friends, because if you're not close to the person, you don't know what are the needs.
Right.
So I think this is like the associations would be this place of friendship when you can actually know each other, know their needs, things that you never think about. Oh, I didn't know that you went through this, or I didn't know that's something common. And from that place of care and love and understand each other, a lot of creativity can happen to build something beautiful. So that's what I have hope.
I think what I'm excited about is it feels like, you know, with everybody who has left their home, it doesn't matter if you went to a neighboring country, or again, like we're saying, maybe there are families that are just really bouncing around even inside the US, but it feels like it'll be a good place to start to have some sort of unity, to have a way of finding that place to say, like, I think because it feels like there is a disconnect, you know, and I'll go back to that word, because there really is, it can be a distance disconnect. It's a way of connecting. It's a way of saying, like, hey, let's all meet at the same place. Let's all be on the same page. Let's start here. It's like a starting point, and it feels like that's what makes it exciting, you know. It's not just being said, we're actually doing it, right? There's the conference in August, and just so excited for more things that are coming. Us being here with you guys is
so cool.
all part of it. So,
well, one of the challenges that I've noticed in the vineyard, and this is not just a cultural challenge, you know, with respect to our heritage or something like that, but this is like, it's kind of like sewn into our vineyard system, and it's a challenge in a lot of ways. And it's the distance thing. You use the word distance. One of our values in the vineyard is church planting. Like, so we want to plant churches, and we want to plant churches that plant churches. And one of the things that happens is we get spread out, right? Like, so maybe you have a church and there's a really dynamic worship ministry there, and maybe some people go and plant another church, and they take several people from the worship ministry, and they go and they start. And that's an amazing thing, and I'm for it 100%. But part of the consequence there is that sometimes we divide things out further apart that maybe need to be brought together occasionally, right? And so even in terms of like our Black and Hispanic pastors associations, there really are Black pastors in the vineyard, and there really are Hispanic pastors in the vineyard. And we do need to pull those folks together so that the distance thing gets, you know, shortened and get everybody in the same room. And I see it all the time with like worship leaders in songwriting. Like the best songwriters, or one of the ways to like really grow songwriters is get them in the same room. Like, we can do it over Zoom, we can email each other, and that's fine. But there's something about being in the same room. It's like the image I have is like a little barbecue. You know, you get your barbecue, you put all the bricks together real close, and you light them, right? And they get really hot, and then you spread them out, and you can cook whatever you're going to cook. But if the bricks get too far apart for too long, they get cold, don't they? And then you pull them back together, and they warm right back up. And so I can see how that distance thing, it matters.
Yeah.
Especially as a leader.
Yeah.
Right?
And I think also to see as a big picture, like, oh, I'm not alone in this. And I ask people on a regular basis, do you know that this isn't just us? We're not just here. You know, we're part of something that's bigger. And that goes back to what you were saying about people not really taking viña very seriously. And I think that still has an effect even in the US. But to see that opportunity for us to, you know, see leaders coming from all over, and really not just saying hi, not just, okay, this is in English and we're translating, but this is in Spanish. This is bilingual. This is intentional.
Right.
And that intentionality is what speaks volumes.
And I think one of the things that's going to happen too is, I think these association moments are going to be places where vineyard leaders emerge, where we're going to have not just a handful of Hispanic leaders, but we're going to have bunches, and we'll know them. You know, they won't be. Here's what I think is probably happening right now. I would imagine that there are amazing leaders in the vineyard right now in all of these different associations, and maybe we just don't know them because we haven't come together and been in the same room and seen each other. And so I'm very looking forward to that.
Yeah. I mean, like the way that I see it is like the way that I see our kids. Like, I mean, there are moments in our conversations that we are like, okay, should we learn like the American way of this, or should they learn the Venezuelan way? What's the best way? If we go that route, like we're gonna be arguing, or like, no, I feel like this is better. No, that's better.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you kind of asked that earlier, and you know, we are a sort of bicultural family. I did learn how to speak Spanish in Venezuela when we lived there after.
That's right.
But yeah, we do, you know, come in those spaces of, wow, this is a cultural line here that we need to figure out.
So if we are thinking in what culture our kids should be, how they should be raised culturally, then we're missing the point. I that's the way that I see it. Like if we want them to be American or Venezuelan, then we're missing what could be great.
Yeah.
But if we're thinking we just want to raise kingdom kids, or kingdom, if we want our kids to be people of the kingdom, then we know that we're going to give them the best of the Venezuelan and the best of the American.
Right.
So that's how I picture the next generations, like the best of each culture in the associations. It's, I mean, brought together. Then the next one are going to get the best out of those conversations.
Right.
So,
and I can't help but notice just the way in which your all's marriage is in some ways like this little prophetic picture of what we need in the vineyard to lead and to pastor in this new context, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess
you've got
a way
this
that
amazing blended family.
Yeah.
And it's so set up to be able to speak to the very people who are going to be coming to your church.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a way that we always describe our marriage and is just that we feel very much like a bridge. You know, we're standing there or not even standing. We're the ones like there supporting the middle and really wanting people to meet there.
Yeah. Well, since you said bridge, that brings me to another thing I wanted to talk about. A lot of the people who are listening to this, they're worship leaders and pastors. And I would imagine that most people who are frequent listeners of the Ferment, they're mostly, I would even say like over 90% are native English speakers, you know, and they're leading churches. They're leading worship ministries, or they're leading churches. Could you talk to us about how we can make like on-ramps for Latin and Hispanic people at our churches? Maybe if it's not even like it's not a La Viña, but you know, we have a Vineyard Church, and there are more and more Hispanic people in all of our communities. Even where I live in rural Kentucky, I don't live in a city, but there are Hispanic people everywhere in Campbellsville now.
Yeah.
So how can I make more space, and how can I communicate welcome for people who are coming to me from Latin cultures?
well, I would say the first thing is get a Latino friend. like that's for me key. And I say this with all seriousness because one of the first, I don't know if the word is misconception, is that all Latinos are the same. So you get a Latino friend and then you get another one and you realize, hey, my Venezuelan friend is very different from my Mexican friend. So
my Mexican friend likes spicy and my Venezuelan doesn't. What's going on?
Exactly. So once you start getting to know, then you start realizing, wow, there is some narrative, there's some commonalities, there's some things that are needed. I have when we were in Pomona, the pastor there, Alan, every Sunday he went to La Viña and started hugging people. He doesn't know any word in Spanish, but he hugged people. Hey, and he language, and he will be okay me saying this. Language is not his strength. Just hola, But he tried. And everyone, there were people that come to me saying, I like this church because the English pastor come and hug me. So little things like that speak. We are relational, cultural.
That's a beautiful.
Yeah, I think in just those phrases, just really easy phrases that you can use. You know, if you do have a lot of people who are showing up to your church, maybe you're not ready to do a bilingual kids ministry. That's okay.
Yeah.
A good example is like a kid show. You know, you just use a few words, very simple to repeat. a few things that can help people feel invited in, especially with children, I think that's going to be a huge way in.
Yeah, I would say, like, in that same friendship, learn the cultural love language. Like every
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, like you know how like there are people that say like, oh, there's a love language of this and that. I think that every culture has a love language. At least that's how I experience it.
Yeah.
Like, and it's easy to say. The way that I see it is like, let's say, for example, you are invited to it in different houses. So if you go to a Latino house, they're probably gonna try to make you feel like part of the family. Oh, you come, you want more? No, I make more for you. You come and help me. I teach you how to cook and all that. Like, you go to I'm gonna say white.
Yeah, of course.
A house and you're gonna have all the plates. Everything is ready on time, and that's it. Like, I thought that the first time I felt like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm in a hotel. I don't know how to behave here. But I realized this is the way that we show appreciation. I would like to have everything perfect for you.
Yeah, so if you show up to a Latino's house, they might just like invite you to cook with them.
That's right. Here, cut this onion.
The hospitality is always great. It's
of
just
course. It's just a different style.
Different expressions.
Come be a part of what we're doing.
My experience with the Asian culture is like, hey, oh no, we want to honor you we want to do as many plates as you can try because we want you to try everything that we can. So all that, like, once you get to learn that, then you also know how to love them better. So now when we invite white friends to our house, we know we want to be on time. We want to have everything because that's love.
Unless they tell us they want to learn how to make arepas, but that's round two.
Well, and then that's me.
At least the first time.
I want to learn how to make Venezuelan food.
Yeah,
teach me.
Yes.
So at least that's the first time that we invite someone. The second time is like, no, now you're part of the family. Let me show you how it is.
Now I'm going to give you my side of the ball.
But this is just a fun example. But in general, there's language that cultures speak without words. So learning that helps a lot.
And it's funny how much of that's invisible to us. Yeah. Because we just grew up in it and we're like, well, that's just the way we do it or whatever. Yeah. It takes a little bit of self-reflection. Yeah. That's beautiful. Okay, I want to talk to you about songs for a second. And maybe we'll land here, okay?
All right.
In the Vineyard, we have all kinds of songs. We have so many songs. And especially if I'm thinking about the Vineyard Global, we have songs that are written in Spanish. We have songs that were written in English but translated into Spanish. And then lately we've been experimenting a little bit with Spanglish. So like bilingual songs. Nothing's a translation. Everything is what it is, just the way you see it on the paper. What do those kind of songs mean to you as a Spanish-speaking worshiper? How are they distinctive, or at least in terms of the way you receive them?
This is interesting. Like, I say that translations were the first songs that I listened, and for me, they represented like in back then and even today is just an expression. And I mean, it's just that the translation many times they are written in a way that we don't hear that many songs in Spanish written.
Did it feel weird?
What it felt weird was singing songs in Spanish with country music background. that did feel weird. Like, why are we singing rock in a Caribbean church? It's like this feels a little weird.
Yeah, that's right.
That's and one of the challenges that we had was like, I want to write songs with Latin rhythms. So I felt like that was something that we should have.
Yeah, that's on our heart.
Yeah, it's in our heart.
Speaking of Latin rhythms, I was telling you guys earlier, I've been to Peru so many times. This sound is in Peru, like everywhere you go in Peru. I don't care where you go, like at the bodega, in the street, in the market. Boom, boom.
Oh, okay.
That rhythm is in Peru everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, that's
and then when I've gone to other Latin countries, it's not that. It's something else. It's like the rhythm is different. But the Peruvian one, I'll never forget as long as I live.
That sounds like reggaeton, like a little bit of that.
I was going to say that's you'll hear that in Caribbean countries, definitely. And I think that's one of those underlying tones that you'll hear in pop music, popular music right now too. But so translations, they were like, it was a good introduction. I mean, in my
case for the Vineyard movement. Like
Yeah.
these songs feel so different from the rest of the songs that I'm used to listen.
Yeah.
But then I felt that there was something missing.
Yeah.
Like
and
because
it's that cultural, that
yes.
musical,
Yeah.
rhythmic part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like if you hear Bolivian music, for example, it's two instruments. It's just the drums and the pan flute. So and normally the drum sounds like a tum 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 tum, and then you have the pan flute tum 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 tum. Like
Yes.
that's like a lot of the traditional. But the meaning is that the drums symbolize the heart of the human beat, the human heart beat.
Yes.
And the flute is how, because Bolivia is in the highland,
Yeah.
how God moved the wind through the
Right.
through the mountains.
Right.
So the music for the indigenous in Bolivia means how the God that moved the wind speak to the human heart.
Yeah.
So there is something very strong with geography, with place,
Yeah.
music, and worship. So
Yeah.
I felt that part was a little bit missing for me in the with translations only.
Right.
Now,
If I
translation with
can-
Latin rhythms,
I was going to say,
I can make that work. Like
if I could speak into a little bit of my experience, I mean, if there were no translations, right? If that wasn't something that was really coming along in early 2000s, I don't think I would have learned Spanish, or I wouldn't have been able to lead in Spanish, because I could recognize what it said in English. Oh, okay, I know what the song
that
is
song
talking
already.
about.
I
Yeah,
already
I know
know
that
that
song.
song.
I know the melody. And even going to Mexico, we would sing a song. Oh, do you know this one? We'll sing it in English. Oh, yes, we know that one. And they would sing it in Spanish. Oh, it's the same song.
Yes.
We know the same thing. There's this it created another connection point.
Yeah.
But when I went to Venezuela and, other experiences after that, hearing songs that I didn't know, that, oh, wait, this was written here, or this was written by these leaders, or in this way, and it felt different. It felt like I wanted to be a part of that. And, even writing in Spanish it runs deeper for me in that sense too, because again, I think there's something very beautiful, and I feel like it's this place that God really wants to meet his people right now that I want in.
Yeah. That's a great story too. It's interesting how, so translations were sort of your introduction, Daniel, to the Vineyard. And even though culturally the music is like, this is weird, but the lyrics are in some way some kind of an introduction to,
it was refreshing.
the Vineyard values even, maybe. And then Nicole, like what's strange about that is like these very same songs are actually they're pulling Daniel in on one side and they're pulling you in on the other side. They're
Yeah.
like pulling you back toward Latin culture
Yeah.
in a way that's so surprising.
Yeah.
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 Well, it's kind of an amazing thing when I'm sitting here listening to you guys talk about it. It's like, oh, this is weird how this is working.
Yeah, with the bilingual songs, I love the bilingual songs. By the way,
Yeah.
Okay.
because for me, it feels like there are some words that you cannot translate. Like no matter what you do, when you translate either English Spanish or Spanish English, you lose the heart of it, the feeling that word creates.
Yeah.
So when you have Spanglish songs, I feel like this is the expression that actually fits. Yeah, that's a word. Like
Well,
that's,
and one of the things I love about it is for me as someone who has almost no Spanish, like I am that's just not where I am at all. But I love these bilingual Spanglish songs because the Spanish is approachable.
Yeah.
And then I'm learning, and then I really love it if the English and the Spanish can rhyme together. To me,
Yeah, I
and
love
for
that.
me, it's like it's so pleasing to sing. But then, just at the idea level, I just love the idea of like English and Spanish rhyming.
Yes.
That for me, that
Yeah.
hits the heart in a different kind of
Yes.
way. It's like, oh, we're saying something even deeper here by
I would say the same
like a
thing for
cultural
me.
rhyme here.
Yeah.
You know,
I love that.
It's a
Yeah.
really beautiful thing. So it's something we're shooting for.
and I think
Yeah.
this is something that we have done for a while now. I'm not saying just English, Spanish, but when you sing a song, let's say just English, but there's some like I don't know, you say in the chorus, you say something like Yeshua or like words of the name of God in the original language. There's something that feels deeper when it's present in the native.
It's weird how language does that.
I know,
it?
right?
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's
But I
amazing.
love the bilingual things.
Okay, so we have songs that are
Yeah, me too.
translated. We've hit like the bilingual thing, which, by the way, we were talking about earlier. We're seeing that in pop music.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
we're only going to see more.
Oh yeah,
I mean, there's
absolutely.
only going to be more Latin people living
Yeah.
in the United States.
And then even like more blends of other languages. I think we'll follow some artists and we're like, that was French as well.
Yeah.
And then they'll throw in an English word at the end, like you're saying, rhyming it with the Spanish. I love it. I feel like it makes a lot of sense to our family, to our marriage,
that's
like,
right.
to me.
That's right. But what about songs written in Spanish? Talk to me about this. You know?
Yeah, it felt like that was the expression from my heart. Like when like songs in Spanish, written in Spanish, and that felt like you don't force anything. Everything feels like, how would I like? I'm trying to find an imagery for this, and I think that the best one that I have is the I don't know. I want to give Nicole some flowers, right? So, and I go to the flower shop. And like there's one that is like it reminds me something of our story. That's the one that I'm going to pick. So like I think leading worship is also like being that flower shop that you are just helping people to offer something to God. Like
Right.
So when the more diversity you can have, the more different people, more stories you can express. So it's like so for me like Spanish is this is the type of expressions that is in my heart. That's how I grew up. That's how I speak. So this is the way that I can feel more comfortable to offer who I am, like completely to God, even in my language. So.
That's so interesting. And for me, I feel like, because we'll write together, right? Which is really interesting to be married and to write. But for whatever reason, I feel more drawn to doing that in Spanish than in English, like 9 out of 10. And I don't know if I can really explain why, other than the fact that like it just, I don't know. It speaks to me at a deeper level.
It is your history. It is the place you came from, you know?
Yeah, it is. It has to be that.
It's in your blood. It's in your bones.
Yeah.
I'm medieval enough to believe that, by the way. I'm just medieval enough to believe
I think so, yeah.
You,
something was unlocked, when we lived there together for, after getting married for 5 years. And it was just a blessing to be able to learn the language. And not only that, like, wow, I can be creative in this language too. And it runs deeper. But even to hear other songs that are, written in Spanish, it's not a translation. It's somebody else who wrote something that, wow, this just resonates with me too. It's really incredible.
Okay, so we'll go back real quickly as we're landing here. You're planting this La Viña congregation. Yeah. Like let's imagine 10 years from now. You have it's a church. It's a real church, it's in Columbus, Ohio.
It
but
has
it's like
sermons and everything.
It has sermons, and there's even communion. And Daniel, it's not a fake church. It's not, it's like a real church, People come in and they're like, yeah, look at this guy. Look at this church. Look at this woman. They have preachers and everything. I would imagine, I'm hoping that there's songwriters at your church. Mm-hmm. Like, obviously, if you two are there's songwriters, but hopefully there's other songwriters. So do you think that there will be songs in all these categories? What do you think will happen?
Yeah, I can picture the three of them.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, one of the things that happened with the Hispanic churches is that you're always going to have the first generation because there's people that come, but these people have kids and this kid needs a place to. So then you need to start creating those space for the second generation that are going to be more they're probably going to feel more comfortable expressing themselves with bilingual songs.
That's right.
So you start with English and then bilingual, and then eventually if you really want to love the city that you live, then you have to do it in English as well. This is something that is in my heart. Is sadly, a lot of the people that come from Latin America only think about United States as a place to get resources to send back. Yeah, at least that's how my experience. Mm-hmm. I do think more like Jeremiah when the Lord says, if you prosper, the cities prosper. So I want the Latinos here to love the city as well. So if we get that to happen, and that start with like, hey, let's sing in English too, because I don't know, so and so is married to an American person and doesn't speak English, but we want them to feel welcome as well. The welcoming has to go by both ways.
Something that we do see that's beautiful at the Viña, that is with Columbus Vineyard, the existing campus, they have English translation available. And I just think that's amazing. So much fun. I love that. And another thing is, having an English song sung every once in a while. There are people who are just learning Spanish. And we know people in California too. They're just like, I don't speak Spanish, but I want to be with you guys, and it's like, yes, come with us and come do this, or go with that person and go be there and serve in that country and do what you feel called in that way. But I do see that, and I do think you're right. And I think translations will always have a place because of that, because of those 1.5, 2, 3 generations, the third generation.
Or just like a truly great song
Yeah.
that God intends to send around
Absolutely.
the world. Like, you even think of a song like Waymaker. I mean, Waymaker is written by an African woman.
Yes.
Right? And
yes.
I don't know how many times that song has been translated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably
exactly.
100.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe who knows how many languages.
And that song has a place right now in the Hispanic culture. I can definitely tell you that.
It has a place anywhere.
Yeah.
It just has a place.
Yeah. I just think it's great to see that. And, it brings us together between those languages. You can go on YouTube and probably find the compilation of all of them.
Right.
But yeah, seeing that Spanish songs that come up from the church as well, seeing the bilingual songs, the back and forth. I'm excited for more of this.
With that song Waymaker, there's something very fun. Like when we were in Pomona, there was an African congregation meeting there, like from time to time. When they sing that song, it feels different. It feels like there could be 20 people in the room, and it feels like there's 100 people. It was like there's something like it was just great.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, as we've had this conversation, I can't help but think that your all's church is going to be like a little greenhouse for these like cultural exploration, and who knows what will happen. We're gonna learn all kinds of things through the church that you plant and the people that you lead and the songs that you write and the people that you raise up.
Yeah.
Amen. Well, hey, thanks for coming on the podcast and just sharing all of your beautiful wisdom. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us.
You are always welcome here. All you have to do is just send an email and we'll do it again.
Yeah. Do you want to know how to say goodbye in Venezuela? It's not the same as Mexico.
Okay, please.
Yeah, you say ciao.
Like
Ciao.
Italian.
Like Italian.
Really?
Yeah.
Ciao.
You'll say ciao.
Okay, wait. So, did the Italians show up in Venezuela? What happened?
Oh, yeah.
There are a lot of Italians in Venezuela.
Lots of Italians in Venezuela.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Ciao.
Yeah. Ciao.
Ciao. Nos vemos.
Nos vemos.
Hey everyone, Casey Coram here, producer of the podcast. Thanks for listening. As always, if you've been enjoying the podcast, here's a few ways you can help us. First of all, leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Also, connect with us on social media. Instagram at The Ferment Podcast and Twitter at FermentCast. All right, everyone, thanks for listening. See you next week. Peace.